I found out my partner had been secretly talking to someone else for months, and it completely shattered my trust in our relationship before I could even react. I've always thought of Alex as more than just a friend. We'd met in college, thrown ourselves into group projects and late-night study sessions, shared secrets that seemed too heavy for anyone else to carry. Over the years, our friendship had morphed into something deeper, something unspoken but undeniable, a closeness that made me feel both comforted and exposed. Living together for the past year had only intensified that connection. I knew his habits, the way he brewed coffee in the morning, the exact inflection of his laugh when he was genuinely amused, the little flinch he did whenever he told a story that revealed a past mistake. And yet, despite knowing him so intimately, there were moments when a shadow would cross his face, brief and fleeting, like a secret he couldn't or wouldn't share. I'd always brushed it off, attributing it to stress from work or random worry. Our apartment was small but cozy, filled with shared memories and little tokens of our life together. A stack of dog-eared novels, framed photos from trips, mismatched mugs he insisted I'd eventually like, and my own clutter that he pretended not to notice. On nights like these, when the hum of the city seeped through the windows and the soft glow of our lamps filled the rooms, I felt content, almost blissfully unaware that the next revelation could shatter this fragile peace. Alex and I had a rhythm, a kind of unspoken agreement that we understood each other better than anyone else. We cooked together, laughed over inside jokes no one else would understand, argued about the silliest things, and then made up before either of us went to bed. It was comfortable, predictable, and yet, beneath that predictability, there was a tension I had begun to notice only recently, a subtle avoidance of certain topics, a hesitation in his eyes whenever I asked about old friends or distant relatives that I had convinced myself that it was nothing, that our life together was solid enough to withstand minor mysteries. But now, as I watched him from the kitchen doorway, stirring his coffee with that familiar distracted frown, I felt an uneasy ripple through me. Something was off, though I couldn't yet pinpoint what. And somewhere deep down, I had the sinking feeling that the ordinary life I cherished so dearly might soon be upended in ways I couldn't imagine. Little did I know, the next few days would force truths into the open, challenge everything I believed about trust and loyalty, and test the boundaries of our relationship in ways neither of us were ready for. The next few days, I started noticing small things that didn't quite add up. Alex had always been punctual, precise, a creature of habit, but suddenly he was forgetting minor details, like locking the door or leaving his wallet on the counter. At first, I tried to dismiss it as stress from work, deadlines, or the late nights he'd been keeping. But then came the little inconsistencies that gnawed at the back of my mind. There were phone calls he stepped out to take, whispered conversations that stopped the moment I walked by. His laptop would shut quickly when I entered the room, and sometimes he seemed lost in thought for longer than usual, eyes clouded with something I couldn't identify. I wanted to ask him, to confront the unease growing inside me, but each time, I hesitated. A part of me feared what the answer might be. Even during mundane routines, the tension lingered. I poured him a cup of coffee one morning, and he barely looked up, mumbling a distracted "thanks" before returning to his screen. His tone wasn't sharp, but there was a distance there, a subtle shift in the intimacy that had defined us for so long. I felt a cold ripple of worry as I watched him, wondering if this was just fatigue or something else entirely. That evening, I found myself rifling through the mail, ostensibly to organize bills, but really just looking for any hint of what might be going on. A single envelope caught my eye, addressed in a handwriting I didn't recognize. I set it aside, rationalizing that it was probably harmless, a delivery from work, maybe a utility notice. But the unease didn't leave me. Every time Alex walked past, my mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Even our friends noticed. During a casual dinner with a few close acquaintances, someone casually remarked, "You two seem a little off lately." I laughed it off, brushing the comment aside, but inside, my chest tightened. Was I imagining it? Or was something really brewing beneath the surface of our carefully maintained normalcy? By the time I went to bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Alex slept beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the ordinary, secure life I thought we had was fraying at the edges. The shadows in his expression, the cryptic phone calls, the subtle distance. All pointed to something hidden, something he wasn't telling me. And as much as I tried to sleep, a small, insistent voice in the back of my mind whispered that soon, very soon, the truth would find a way out. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sunlight spills lazily across the floor, and the apartment feels impossibly still. I had been tidying up, trying to distract myself from the nagging unease that had taken root over the past few days. That's when I noticed it. A small, folded piece of paper tucked between the pages of one of his notebooks. First, I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't pry, but something about the way it peeked out, as if intentionally hidden, made my curiosity impossible to resist. I picked it up, unfolding it slowly, heart thumping in my chest. And there it was, a message, short and cryptic, clearly written to him, with words that instantly set off alarms in my mind. It wasn't explicit. Not yet. But the implications were clear enough to make my stomach twist. Names I didn't recognize, references to meetings and late-night encounters, phrases that hinted at intimacy or secrecy. I felt a cold wave wash over me, my fingers trembling as I held the paper. My mind raced, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe a friend had a private joke I didn't understand. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. I hid the note quickly, as if Alex might somehow notice, though I knew that was impossible. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. I tried to act normal, chatting casually, laughing at his jokes, helping him fold laundry, all while my thoughts spun wildly. Every glance at him made me imagine scenarios, each one darker than the last, each one more difficult to bear. Evening. I couldn't stand the weight of uncertainty any longer. I watched him move around the kitchen, so familiar, so ordinary, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed something entirely hidden beneath that ordinary surface. The contrast was unbearable, the life I thought I knew, and the secret life hinted at by that single note. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every subtle hesitation, every secretive glance he had ever given me. The clue had opened a door I wasn't ready to face, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that once I stepped through it, nothing would ever be the same. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I repeated the phrases over and over in my head. It's probably innocent. I'm overreacting. It's nothing personal. I told myself I was reading too much into small details, that the note could easily be some harmless correspondence or an inside joke I simply didn't understand. Yet, even as I forced the thoughts into neat, rational boxes, a part of me refused to be silenced. Every movement Alex made seemed amplified. The way he glanced at his phone, the way he lingered over certain messages, the subtle tension in his posture, it all screamed something hidden. I tried to laugh when he joked, tried to be casual during dinner, but every chuckle felt hollow. Every conversation shadowed by the nagging suspicion that I was seeing only a carefully constructed version of reality. That evening, I went for a walk to clear my mind, hoping that distance and fresh air could calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I replayed our interactions in my head, desperately looking for any explanation that didn't involve betrayal. Could I have misunderstood the note? Was I being paranoid, letting my imagination twist ordinary moments into evidence of deception? I clung to these possibilities like lifelines, yet deep down, I knew the truth was creeping closer. Returning home, I tried to mask my unease with small tasks, washing dishes, folding laundry, tidying the living room. Each mundane action was a distraction, a feeble attempt to convince myself that everything was normal. But Alex noticed. He asked if I was okay, his voice gentle but concerned, and I felt a pang of guilt for keeping my worry hidden. Yet terror at the thought of confronting him. I told him I was fine, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. He nodded, but I could see the hint of worry linger in his gaze, subtle yet unmistakable. In that moment, I realized denial wasn't going to protect me from what was coming. It was a fragile shield, paper thin, and the truth waiting on the other side of that note was growing sharper. More insistent. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the soft rhythm of his breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that my carefully constructed world was about to fracture. The note had been a crack in the wall, a warning that the foundation was weaker than I ever imagined. And no matter how desperately I tried to ignore it, I knew I couldn't unsee what I had glimpsed. The following days were torture. Every small action Alex took seemed magnified. Every glance at his phone or sudden secrecy felt like proof of something I wasn't supposed to see. I found myself analyzing every text tone, every pause in his speech, every fleeting expression, searching desperately for a hint, a clue, anything to confirm or deny the growing knot of fear in my chest. Even ordinary routines became tense exercises in observation. When he stepped out to take calls, I lingered nearby under the guise of doing chores, heart hammering, mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I caught him smiling at his screen once, just a fleeting grin, and my stomach twisted with dread. Was it innocent? Or was it another layer of the secret I had begun to sense, like shadows moving just beyond the corner of my vision? I tried to maintain a normal demeanor when friends visited, laughed when Alex cracked jokes, and even attempted to keep up with my own work and hobbies. But inside, the unease gnawed at me, relentless and consuming. Every unexplained absence, every whispered conversation made my anxiety spike, and I began replaying past events with obsessive scrutiny. Had I missed signs before? Subtle hints, casual comments that now seemed loaded with hidden meaning? The most excruciating moments were when Alex tried to be affectionate. A brush of his hand, a soft kiss on the cheek, tiny gestures that should have reassured me, but instead they filled me with confusion. Was he masking guilt with normalcy? Or was my imagination poisoning what had always been a safe, loving environment? I couldn't tell anymore. Late one night, I found myself pacing the apartment, gripping the note I had discovered days ago. My mind churned with questions I couldn't voice, scenarios I couldn't escape. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, yet I clung desperately to hope, to the possibility that my fears were unfounded. But hope felt fragile, fragile like a thread stretched too thin, threatening to snap at the slightest provocation. By the end of the week, I was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The weight of suspicion, of uncertainty, was suffocating. I knew something had to give, some confrontation had to happen, but the thought of facing the truth terrified me. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? Either outcome seemed unbearable. And somewhere deep down, I feared that once the truth came out, nothing could ever return to the simplicity of the life we had once known. I felt like I was tearing apart from the inside. Every moment spent with Alex became a battle between trust and suspicion, love and fear. My mind refused to rest. It replayed every laugh, every tender glance, every quiet conversation we'd shared over the years, twisting them into riddles I couldn't solve. Was I imagining the subtle distance? Or was it real, a symptom of something far more devastating lurking beneath his calm exterior? I oscillated wildly between hope and despair. One minute, I'd cling to the belief that nothing was wrong, that our bond was strong enough to survive small secrets or misunderstandings. The next, my heart sank as I imagined the worst. Him lying, hiding, betraying the very intimacy we had nurtured for years. I questioned myself constantly. Had I been blind, naive, too trusting? Or was this his deception, meticulously hidden in plain sight? Even the mundane became unbearable. Sharing a meal felt like a performance, a test I wasn't ready to pass. Every touch felt loaded with meaning, every word weighed with unspoken implications. I caught myself analyzing his tone, the way he looked at me, the pauses that now seemed deliberate. My thoughts spiraled, sometimes leaving me breathless, sometimes paralyzing me with fear that my life as I knew it was unraveling, that I found myself recalling past moments in painful detail. The late-night talks, the shared secrets, the promises whispered in the dark, they all felt fragile now, as though they could shatter at any second. And the deeper I dwelled on them, the more I feared that those memories were all I had left, illusions propped up by hope and denial. By the time evening came, I realized I couldn't continue like this. The conflict within me had reached a tipping point. I loved him, I always had, but love alone couldn't protect me from betrayal or from the fear of it. I knew I needed answers, clarity, a confrontation that would either validate my suspicions or restore my sense of security. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Alex slept beside me, a gnawing dread settled in my chest. The confrontation loomed like a storm on the horizon, unavoidable and potentially catastrophic. And deep down, I knew that once the truth was revealed, Nothing could remain the same. Not us, not our life together. Not even the fragile sense of normalcy I had been clinging to so desperately. I spent the next morning pacing the apartment, hands clasped behind my back, replaying possible conversations in my mind. Every scenario twisted and turned, morphing into outcomes I couldn't control. Should I ask directly? Should I confront him gently, carefully, or just let it slip naturally, hoping for honesty? The more I thought, the more paralyzed I became. Each option carried risk. A gentle approach might allow for a truthful explanation, but it could also give him the chance to craft a lie that seemed plausible. A direct confrontation might force the truth out, but at what cost? Could I handle the revelation if it was worse than I imagined? My stomach knotted at the thought. I considered timing. When was the right moment? In the morning, when both of us were clear-headed? Or at night, when emotions ran high, potentially forcing raw honesty? I imagined every possibility. The conversation spiraling into an argument, a confession that left me reeling, or the crushing realization that I'd been blind for months. And then there was the fear of change. Our life, our routines, everything I had taken for granted, could shift in an instant. What if he admitted to a betrayal? Could I forgive? Could I trust him again? Or was the foundation of our relationship already compromised, with cracks so deep that no conversation could repair them? I even debated whether to gather evidence, subtle proofs that could confirm my suspicions, or if that would make me feel worse. Could I live knowing I had spied, searched, or mistrusted him before confronting him directly? My mind twisted around these questions endlessly, a labyrinth with no clear exit. Finally, I realized that indecision was no longer an option. The weight of uncertainty had become unbearable. I had to face it one way or another. I had to confront him, not out of anger, not for revenge, but for truth. Because without truth, everything we had built together, everything I believed in, would continue to crumble silently under the weight of secrets and suspicion. That evening, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I waited until Alex was settled on the couch, a soft hum of music in the background, his phone face down on the coffee table. My heart pounded as I sat across from him, trying to appear casual while every nerve in my body screamed that this moment could change everything. I need to talk to you. I began, my voice steadier than I felt. He looked up, a flicker of concern crossing his eyes. He nodded, silent, as if he sensed the gravity of what was coming. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever truth might emerge, before I could ask the questions swirling in my mind. He shifted, eyes avoiding mine for a moment, then meeting mine with a strange, unreadable intensity. "I've been meaning to tell you something," he said, voice low, hesitant, almost fragile. My stomach twisted. The words I had feared to hear were about to be spoken, but somehow, hearing them start to form in his mouth made the world shrink to just the two of us. He paused, then continued. "It's not easy for me to say, and I didn't want to hurt you, but I owe you honesty." My chest tightened, every instinct warning me of the unknown. I leaned in slightly, silent, ready to catch every word, every inflection, every hesitation that could reveal the truth. His hands fidgeted nervously on his lap, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. I realized, suddenly, that the confession wasn't going to be a simple admission. It was layered, heavy with history, with choices made behind closed doors, with consequences I hadn't yet begun to fathom. And as he began to speak, the first words fell into the room like fragile glass, threatening to shatter the delicate equilibrium of our lives. "I haven't been completely honest with you," he whispered, the words trembling. "There's something I've been keeping from you, and it's not what you think, but it's serious." My heart raced, mind spinning. I braced myself for the revelation, for the truth that would finally lift the shadow of doubt that had been creeping over me for days. That moment, I realized there was no turning back. Whatever came next, our lives would be irreversibly altered, and I would have to decide whether love could survive the secrets he was about to reveal. He took a deep breath, his hands clutching the edge of the couch as if it were an anchor. "Okay," he said slowly, voice shaking slightly. "I need you to understand everything from the beginning. I never meant to hurt you. I love you. But there's something I did, and I've kept it from you because I was scared, scared of losing you, scared of your reaction, scared of what it would mean for us." My heart thumped painfully in my chest. "Alex, just tell me," I whispered, voice barely audible, my fingers tightening around mine as I tried to brace myself. He nodded, swallowing hard. A few months ago, I reconnected with someone from my past. Someone I shouldn't have. It started with innocent messages, catching up, reminiscing, and then it became something more. I didn't act on it physically, I swear, but emotionally. I let myself be drawn in. I lied to you about it because I didn't want to ruin what we have. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mind spun, trying to process what he had just said. The familiar rhythm of our life together, the late-night talks, the inside jokes, the plans for the future, now felt fragile, like glass balanced on a ledge. I wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to run, to cry, all at once. But it's over now, he continued quickly, panic creeping into his voice. I ended it because I realized that you're the one I want, the one I love. I can't imagine my life without you, and I made a mistake. I know that. I couldn't tell you until I was sure I could be honest with myself and with you. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. My stomach churned, my chest tight, and my thoughts raced uncontrollably. I felt betrayed, heartbroken, and yet, there was still the trace of love that had tethered me to him all these years. Could I forgive? Could I trust him again after this emotional betrayal? I leaned back, struggling to find my voice. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why keep this from me at all? I demanded, not yelling but trembling with a mix of hurt and fury. I was scared, he admitted, voice breaking. Scared that telling you would destroy us, that you'd leave, that everything we've built would collapse. I was selfish, I know that, and I'm so sorry. I couldn't lose you. I stared at him, words failing me. The confession hung in the room like a storm cloud, heavy, dark, and threatening. And though I was shaking with anger and pain, a small, fragile part of me still remembered the person I loved, the years we'd shared, the bond that had seemed unbreakable. This was the moment our lives shifted, the pivot where trust had been fractured, and everything we knew about our relationship would be tested in ways neither of us could yet understand. The room felt impossibly small, every sound amplified, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the floorboards, the rapid beating of my heart. I sat there, stunned, as Alex's words echoed in my mind over and over, each repetition a dagger twisting deeper. Betrayal, deception, emotional intimacy with someone else. I can't believe this, I whispered, my voice trembling. All this time you were lying to me. My hands clenched into fists in my lap, the paper-thin veil of trust one had clung to for so long shredding before my eyes. Alex flinched at my tone, guilt and desperation etched across his features. I know, and I'm sorry, more than I can even say. I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But the words barely registered. My mind was a storm of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. I felt the warmth of our shared apartment turn cold, suffocating. The life I thought we had, the comfort, the security, the routine, was crumbling beneath the weight of his confession. I stood abruptly, pacing, trying to steady my breathing. You could have told me. I snapped, the frustration bubbling over. I trusted you. I believed in us. And this changes everything. He reached out, but I stepped back instinctively, a physical manifestation of the emotional barrier that had gone up between us. Please, don't push me away, he pleaded. I'm being honest now. Isn't that what matters? I shook my head, tears welling up. Honest now doesn't erase the months of lies. How am I supposed to just forget this? How am I supposed to trust you again? We stood in silence, the tension so thick it felt like it could choke us. I could feel the room closing in, the weight of his actions pressing down on me. My mind raced through every shared memory, every intimate moment, trying to reconcile the man I loved with the secret he had kept. And yet, amidst the storm of anger and hurt, a flicker of clarity emerged. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about choice. About whether we could navigate the wreckage together, or whether the fracture in our bond was too wide to bridge. I sank back onto the couch, burying my face in my hands, trying to make sense of the tidal wave of emotion crashing over me. Alex sat beside me, careful, tentative, as though proximity alone could mend a wound that had already cut deep. This was the first night after the confession, the immediate fallout, and I knew that the coming days would test every ounce of my patience, every shred of trust, and the very foundation of our relationship. Nothing could remain the same that I spent the rest of the night awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Alex had said. My mind refused to settle. The confession had uprooted everything I thought I knew about us, about him, about myself. I tried to dissect it, to find logic in the chaos, but emotions flooded every thought: betrayal, heartbreak, lingering love, and the nagging question: how do I even move forward from this? I remembered the early days, how he had been my anchor, my confidant, my safe space. Every memory felt tinged with doubt now. Had those tender moments been real, or had they been colored by the deceit I was only just uncovering? I couldn't tell anymore. The person I loved, the man I trusted implicitly, had kept a secret that now loomed over me like a storm cloud I couldn't escape. Sleep was impossible. I wandered the apartment, replaying the confession in my head like a broken record. The phrases, the pauses, the tremor in his voice, they all weighed heavily. Each one a reminder that honesty had come too late to shield me from hurt. I thought about our shared plans, the future we had envisioned together, and wondered if it was still possible to salvage any part of it that I even considered speaking to someone, a friend, a family member, anyone who could help me process this without bias. But I realized that this was mine to navigate, a personal reckoning. The truth was mine now, and how I responded would define what came next. Could I forgive? Could I trust again? Or would the fissure his secret created widen until it split everything apart? Hours passed, and the apartment remained silent, save for the occasional creak of the building settling. I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and clarity. I couldn't change the past, and I couldn't unhear the words. But I could choose how to confront the aftermath, how to decide whether to rebuild or walk away. By morning, the storm in my mind had settled into a tense stillness. The confession wasn't just a revelation, it was a turning point. I realized that the next steps, the decisions I would make, would shape not only our relationship, but also my sense of self. And though fear and doubt still lingered, I knew I had to face the consequences head on, without avoidance, without denial, and without letting the shadows of secrecy dictate my life any longer. By the afternoon, I knew I couldn't carry the weight of this alone. I needed perspective, a sounding board, someone who could help me untangle the mess of emotions swirling inside me. I called my closest friend, someone I trusted implicitly, someone who had seen me at my strongest and my weakest. As soon as they answered, my voice cracked. I need to talk. It's about Alex. The conversation began hesitantly, words spilling out in fits and starts. I recounted the confession, every word, every pause, every tremor in Alex's voice. As I spoke, I felt the tension inside me slowly shift, just slightly, as if sharing the burden could lighten the load. Even if only a fraction. My friend listened patiently, asking questions, probing gently, helping me confront my own feelings without judgment. What do you feel? They asked finally, and that was harder to answer than the confession itself. I felt betrayed, yes. Heartbroken, yes. But amidst the anger and sadness, there was still love. Still a deep connection that I couldn't simply erase. That I reflected on the relationship, on the trust we had built over years, and on the vulnerability that had made me so susceptible to hurt. I realized that forgiveness, if it were even possible, wouldn't be easy. Trust would have to be rebuilt, boundaries reestablished, and honesty maintained without compromise. And even then, the shadow of this revelation would linger, a quiet reminder of what had happened. After the call, I spent time alone, journaling my thoughts, trying to make sense of the chaos. I wrote about fear, about anger, about hope, and about the delicate balance between wanting to hold on and needing to protect myself. Each word, each sentence, helped me understand the enormity of the situation and the responsibility I had for my own emotional well-being. By the end of the day, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and determination. I couldn't change the past, and I couldn't undo the hurt, but I could control how I responded. I could confront Alex, I could demand clarity, and I could decide whether love alone was enough to weather the storm that his secret had brought into our lives. That evening, I gathered every ounce of courage I had left. Alex was sitting on the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly through his phone. The sight of him, so ordinary and calm, made my chest tighten. I took a deep breath and spoke, my voice firm but controlled. "We need to talk. About everything. About us." He looked up immediately, eyes wide, sensing the seriousness in my tone. He set the phone down and nodded, a silent acknowledgement that the moment I had been dreading had arrived. I sat across from him, hands clasped tightly in my lap, and tried to steady my racing thoughts. "I've been thinking," I began, my voice shaking slightly, "about what you told me, about the secret, about everything you've kept from me. I need to understand why. I need to know how we move forward, if that's even possible." Alex exhaled slowly, as if he had been holding his breath for days. I, I don't know how to fix it," he admitted, voice low. "I can't erase what I did, and I can't change the past. But I want to make it right. I want to rebuild trust, if you'll let me." Anger and hurt surged inside me, but so did a glimmer of the love I had for him. I shook my head, tears pricking my eyes. Rebuilding trust. That's not something that happens overnight. It's going to take time, effort, honesty. And even then, I can't promise it will be the same. He nodded solemnly. "I know, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I'll answer every question, be completely transparent, whatever you need." We sat in tense silence, each of us processing the weight of our emotions. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with potential pitfalls, and the shadow of betrayal still lingered heavily between us. But at least we were talking. At least we were acknowledging the fracture instead of pretending it didn't exist. That I realized then that confrontation wasn't about victory or punishment. It was about understanding, about defining boundaries, and about deciding if the bond we shared could survive the truth. And though the road ahead would be difficult, I knew that avoiding it would only prolong the pain, while facing it, together or apart, was the only way to find clarity. The days that followed were a mixture of cautious conversations and uneasy silences. We tried to resume routines, but everything felt fragile, like walking on thin ice. I noticed the small efforts Alex made, answering questions without hesitation, keeping his phone out in the open, including me in even minor decisions. It was progress, but every gesture reminded me of the betrayal that had fractured our trust. I found myself analyzing everything, my own feelings, his actions, our interactions. Some moments brought warmth and familiarity, fleeting glimpses of the bond we had shared, while others triggered anxiety, reminders of the secret that had threatened to destroy us. I was torn between wanting to forgive and fearing that forgiveness might make me vulnerable again. That we had long talks, sometimes stretching into the early hours, where honesty became our fragile bridge. I expressed my hurt, my anger, and my doubts, while he listened, truly listened, responding with empathy and a willingness to do the work. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't instant. But it was a start, a tentative rebuilding of a connection that had been broken. Even with progress, I couldn't ignore the lingering shadows. Memories of the confession, the note, and the emotional betrayal still surfaced at odd moments, uninvited and sharp. I realized that moving forward would require constant awareness, a careful balance of trust and caution, and an understanding that some scars might never fully fade. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, I felt a small, fragile hope. A hope that love, combined with transparency and effort, could survive even the deepest cracks. I knew the coming weeks and months would be critical. Every choice, every word, every gesture would either strengthen the bond or expose it to further fractures. And as I went to bed that night, watching Alex asleep beside me, I allowed myself a brief, hesitant thought. Maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. Maybe the past didn't have to define the future. But the truth remained. Nothing would ever be quite the same. And the journey to healing had only just begun. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the apartment. For the first time in days, I felt a moment of calm. I sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had transpired, the confession, the anger, the sleepless nights, the tentative conversations, and the fragile steps toward rebuilding trust. That I realized that the pain hadn't disappeared and likely never would entirely. But the choice wasn't about erasing hurt. It was about navigating it, about deciding whether the bond we shared was strong enough to endure mistakes, missteps, and the shadows of secrecy. I looked over at Alex, who was stirring awake, and felt a mixture of lingering doubt and cautious hope that we had faced the raw truth. And though it had shaken our foundation, it had also forced honesty to the surface. I understood now that love wasn't just about joy or comfort. It was about facing the hardest moments, confronting fears, and making decisions that were honest. Even when painful. Alex turned to me, a tentative smile on his face. I returned it, hesitant but genuine. "Good morning," I whispered, my voice soft but steady. He nodded, eyes meeting mine with unspoken understanding. There were no promises of perfection, no guarantees that the past wouldn't shadow us. But there was a willingness to try, to rebuild, and to move forward together. That I knew the road ahead would be challenging, full of tests and moments of doubt. But I also knew that this experience, as painful as it had been, had revealed something crucial: the strength of our connection, the depth of our emotions, and the possibility that even fractured trust could be mended with honesty, effort, and commitment. For now, that was enough. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension ease slightly, and allowed myself to embrace a fragile hope for the future. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it, with eyes wide open, heart cautious but willing, and a resolve to navigate the complexities of love, truth, and human imperfection together.